How old were you when you dressed as a banana?
Me, Frodo, and Pippin over here will head in a different direction, which is in the direction of this week's newspapers. To let's see what's happening in the news.
Wow, you can tell we're only doing this once a month, can't you?
And welcome to the Neutral Cider Hotel podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Gabriel Cook, along with the wonderful Martin Goodwin-Sharman.
Hello.
And producer Scott.
Hello.
Hang on, something's gone slightly awry because you appear to have forgotten each other's names.
No, that's fine. Just move on.
Okay. Grant is off on assignment this week and unable to join us, but we'll do our very, very best to carry on without him. Coming up a little bit later on the show, we'll be chatting with the co-founder of Wilding Cider, Sam Leach. We'll also be answering our first speak pipe of season 2. But first...
God. Oh.
I know. But first, before all of that, well... I've been on holiday. What's that? It's just the easiest way of saying it, isn't it? I've been on holiday. And I tell you what, February in the UK... It's a very nice time to go away on holiday because weather's a bit minging generally. In fact, there were 3 storms in 1 week, I do believe. Martin, you were here.
Yeah, my greenhouse is barely here. That was the worst, most British problem I think I've ever had. I think when I was growing up.
How are the tomatoes?
Yeah, well, do you know, I'm not even going into the full saga of the greenhouse, but it's been barren waiting to be deep cleaned because we had blight last year, which, again, when I was growing up listening to music like Limp Bizkit, I never thought I'd be dealing with blight and greenhouses and winter damage. Like, what kind of adulthood did you get to miss going away to the sunny lands of where was it?
I was very, very fortunate to go to Zimbabwe and South Africa because Jules, my lovely partner, she's from Zimbabwe originally, and since we have been together, not had the opportunity to go to Zim because obviously it's been a very, very challenging time, and a little sort of window of opportunity afforded itself to potentially go out to Southern Africa. We were going out to just near to Cape Town for a wedding, and I was going to go to CiderCon, but decided not to. Relatively last minute, just because of challenges getting over there and not wanting to get stuck over there and miss this trip. But it did mean that there was like a week's window where like, okay, let's go to Zim, let's go and do it. And we had a magical time to go and see where Jules grew up. It is I'm going to say that Harare is a little bit different to Herefordshire. Like there's just a bit diff. Amazingly green, just so many trees. It's a very big, sprawling, extensive city, and certainly where Jules grew up was, just amazing. The trees, the birds, it's such a nice climate as well. It's kind of like permanently 23 degrees C. What's that in Fahrenheit?
Just like San Diego, isn't it?
Just like San Diego. Yeah, it is actually probably not a million miles dissimilar. So it was lush, and managed to have a few days up in the Eastern Highlands. So you can probably guess which part of the country that's in and what the topography is like too, by the name of the region. And knowing that we were going to go out there just a few months before, somebody had alerted me to the fact that there is a cider maker in Zimbabwe. Called Nyanga Craft Cider. So Nyanga. Go check it out. Nyanga Craft Cider. And I was speaking to Marvin, his name is, on Instagram, seeing if we could find an opportunity to meet up. And we managed to make it happen, just communicating via the sort of the messaging on Insta, agreed to rendezvous at a location. And met the guy, and he's just the nicest guy, and told this amazing story of he's a humble, but he's quite a smart guy, He had a background in food science, and then he went to work on projects supplying water out into rural communities. Wasn't a big beer drinker, but his first taste of a cider, a Savannah cider from South Africa, he enjoyed it, but it was a bit sweet and a little bit bland, so he wanted to make his own. Because apples do grow in the Eastern Highlands region. There are a handful of sort of larger farms where dessert apple varieties, Granny Smiths and Golden Delicious and things like that do grow for domestic consumption, and I think a little bit of export to other parts of Southern and Eastern Africa. And so he started to use some of these apples and to make a bit of cider. But on his trips away, he would have to be away from home for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So he'd make the cider, and then it would turn vinegary. It would turn acetic. So he realised that he needed to keep more of a, because it's quite warm, I suppose.
Oh, no,
He needed to keep a bit more focus on it, and so he decided to do that by quitting his job and going full time on this fairly small amount of cider.
Honey, it's all turned to vinegar. Yeah, all in. Let's go all in.
Pretty much. That is pretty much how it went. Now, I remember being in New Zealand and working for this small cider maker and feeling that, gosh, there aren't many other cider makers. There's not many resources or places to help understand how to make or to package or anything. Imagine being the only cider maker in Zimbabwe. I mean, literally the only one, no resources or guidance or advice. So he turned to YouTube. And he says that he has watched every single how to make cider video on YouTube. And I have no doubt over the course of the years.
Does that mean that kind of that South African cider making then, the culture of it is mass inspired by American cider? I can't imagine the UK cider makers are putting up how-to videos as much as like American people are.
The vast majority of them are the US, and big credit goes out to Reverend Nat. He was name checked by Marvin as the person who posted the most videos and who he enjoyed watching those videos the most. And so he started in sort of 2016. So he's been doing for a few years, quite a few iterations worth, and he's able to have access to fruit out of cold storage. So it's not necessarily a case of having to just do an annual production. He can do a few batches through the course of the year. So it had all this amazing story. And then they got onto the tasting bit. And when you like somebody and the story's great and you're willing and you're desperately wanting for that cider to taste good. And there have been occasions when something a little bit similar to this in the UK has happened, and then they have presented their cider and it has been, vile in some way, shape or form. And I was fully expecting that to be the case but of course it wasn't. It was amazing. It tasted fresh. It was clean. Given that he uses no sulfur, it's all just about care and control. And as well as sort of just the straight up apple cider, he was also using lots of other fruits that are grown in the local area to provide some flavoring. So there was with a really intense, juicy pineapple. There was also one done with strawberries, but the strawberries were fermented, so it was bone dry. Just absolutely gorgeous things. So really cool guy, really cool story, but he's only making 1,000 litres. And the reason why he's making so little is not a route to market issue. He sells everything that he makes instantaneously, and he hasn't even got into major towns or cities. It's just in the local area where he's making it. The limiting factor is his slightly antiquated milling and pressing technique, especially the milling bit. This is the equipment that chops or mashes the apple into a pulp so that you can extract the juice and press it, because it has to be a 2-stage process because the apples are so tough. That piece of equipment is called his grandmother. She is pounding these apples with a giant stick in a trub, which is how they would pound a maize or sorghum as well in southern and eastern Africa. So I will be quite shortly on the social medias trying to. The campaign will be like, so let's give Granny a rest or something. Let her have a bit of a time out, and trying to get some kind of a bit of milling and pressing equipment just to increase his production, because it's a great guy, it's a great story, and just wonderful things. So
to expand his operation, he has to go on like ancestry.com to get more millers. This poor guy. That's insane. That scale.
Amazing.
To scale up something that's like, because that's the hardest bit, that kind of pressing milling as by hand. I did it in Hackney for like a small batch with literally people like, just use a stick or a log or something like that. And you do that for 10 minutes and you're like, I do not want to live. So I can't imagine building a business model
exhausting.
on your gran doing it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So do go check it out. Instagram is the best place to go and see what Marvin's up to. Nyanga, Instagram.com/Nyanga Cider. Just absolutely awesome. We're gonna make him a global superstar. I very much hope. So yeah. So during the middle of the Northern Hemisphere winter, I was away drinking cider with Marvin in the Eastern Highlands, and then sort of having a nice time in Cape Town. So what have you been up to, Martin? Yeah.
Well, I think that as adventurous as I got, I've been doing some blends again, doing some things that will be out soon.
Nice.
But until something's labeled and ready to sell, I don't think I should even talk about it to sway if it actually happens in the end or whatnot. But
oh no, come on, give us a little sneaky peek.
There's one that's a 3-barrel blend that's been bottled, and there's a big batch of something mysterious that will be soon. But that's all I'll say. But I've been we're getting ready to go to Mexico on top of your holiday story, and
nice.
You're gonna come visit me while you're here, right?
Sí, por favor.
Sí, mi amigo.
Yeah, mi hombre, la mascot.
I'm only 20 minutes from the Mexico border in Tijuana.
Because obviously you're going to Tijuana.
Yeah. I'm not going to Oaxaca.
To Tijuana.
Yeah, we got tickets straight out there.
Gonna have the party in TJ.
But, I've been doing the basic I could do is at least Duolingo. And because of that, I've been looking at the amount of time I spend on my phone, and it now says education, which is Duolingo. And it was like, oh, you're doing a couple hours a week in here and that. And I saw Instagram and everything. I was on for like 3 hours a day. And I was like, that is just not a healthy number. So I put a time limit on my phone for half hour on social media. And I gotta say, it's one of the best decisions I've ever done in my life. And now I want to throw my phone in a river and never, ever go online again, which isn't good when you're supposedly the guy who does the socials for a podcast. But
well, also, what about cider shit too?
Well, yeah. Also, you are a social media cider influencer, par extraordinaire.
It all means nothing in a good way. Like if you're doing it for fun, and it's a fun thing to do.
Getting all existential. It's gone a bit dark and a bit windy for a few weeks.
No, but I've literally been...
He's been thinking for far too long.
It's when you're at night or whatever, and you're just... Like, for me, I'm sat next to my wife, and then I'm like, all right, so there's about 2 hours there where I'm just on a phone, and now I'm like, oh, I actually remember conversations, and I sound like I'm parroting what she would say, but genuinely, I'm like, how did I spend that much time on a phone? So yeah, that's all I've done is take the red pill and open my eyes. So come join.
Matrix reference for those that don't know.
Yeah, not an incel reference. Don't don't lump me in with them. I'm off my phone. I'm happy. Wow. Also, Matrix reference. Like no one.
Yeah, hang on, but there are some people, Martin, who are in the UK certainly legal drinking age. Actually, US too. It came out in 1999, so it could be that it was born. They were, it came out before they were born. So maybe they don't know what the Matrix is.
But after our tax episode extravaganza, I don't think we've held on to the under 18 demographic of the Neutral Cider Hotel fan base.
Have we held on to any demographic? After those somebody commented that was a very fascinating exercise in taxation. Thank you very much. Everybody else didn't listen. Well, I'm not going to talk about tax. I'm only going to talk about tap silhouette. No.
Right into the microphone then. Go on. Tell us.
No, I don't want to, because I'll just go on a long trip, and I don't want
Lord
to.
of the Rings reference.
So, yeah, we'll me, Frodo, and Pippin over here will head in a different direction. All right, that's enough of that. Now let's open up the papers and see what's happening in the news. Cider Hotel, it's time for this week's news. What's happening in the world of cider beyond, the natural ongoing tax changes and its ramifications, which we'll come back to at a later day. Nope. Tell you what, let's kick off with something that is actually really quite important, which is about the horrificness of what is happening within Ukraine at the moment, and looking for some signs of positivity and signs of people actually taking action. And the drinks community is no different to many other industries, is rallying around fabulously. There's a number of different sort of campaigns and angles, but certainly the one that's caught my eye and that I've participated in is called Drinkers for Ukraine, and you can find all the details at drinkersforukraine.com. They are encouraging people to do solidarity brews with using sort of traditional and classic Ukrainian beer recipes. And there's also been sort of auctions of bottles. I auctioned off a bottle of 2017 version 1
sausage Perry.
La Saison des Poires. No, not non-sausage. Co-ferment.
He was trying to raise money, not pay someone to
That's
take it off his
right.
hands.
I would have had to. All right, Scott. Bitch. Auctioned off a bottle of La Saison des Poires, episode 1, for a reasonable. The person who has bought it, which is Mike from Rural Orchard in Devon, he said he wouldn't like me to disclose exactly how much he did bid. He bid quite a lot of money for it. It was an exceedingly generous offer.
Brilliant.
And I've got a bottle left still, so that was one of two
second class
that I've got
delivery, and I've spent 400 quid. Also, I'm going to lean in here. Did you just say episode 1 because you've been watching Star Wars?
Did.
So is that your
I think
the Phantom
I did.
Menace?
Oh, sorry. Hand, is
Saison des Poires, episode 1, A New Hope.
Does that? So that makes me what Qui-Gon Jinn, and you're Jar Jar Binks.
Unfortunately, I can't even say his catchphrase right now. So
Don't do it for everyone's benefit. Let's move on. They did a live stream over the weekend, and there's lots of people participating. So if you're in the drinks industry, or you want to sort of get a hold of, there are some people doing say auctions and a raffle as well. I've got a copy of Modern British Cider, and also a copy of Ciderology going into. Well, I think I'm going to do it as a combined into a raffle.
Press both of them at the same time, Scott. Close enough. That's combined enough in my head.
Combined enough, and also like a bespoke tasting session, and there are lots and lots of people who are participating in this. So there's a lot of goodwill, and from a cider perspective, there is a cider maker within Ukraine. I haven't met Vitaly from Berryland before, but he's been making wines and ciders and mead and fruit wines at his place just west of Ukraine, and from photography sort of shown via the internet, his cider has been destroyed.
Oh my God.
Which is just utterly devastating. Thankfully, he's okay. He's in Italy right now, I believe, or certainly he's out of the country. He is safe, but yeah, his place is no more at the moment. So there is some of his produce in the UK still from Cider is Wine. So do go and have a look there and sort of purchase some of those ciders and show a bit of solidarity for our Ukrainian cider friend. Gosh, it brings everything into focus, and that maybe changes to tax laws not a priority. Gabe, think
I was going to say
a priority.
You literally were like, let's have a fun news section, and I will say it's a great cause, and like lovely that we're even talking about it, because there's just no way to like kind of talk about it in a fun cider podcast way, and like a quite sobering moment when it started kicking off, and it was that case of like the same as like London breweries here would be like, oh, we're closed for COVID or whatever. There were people that were putting up on their Instagram and that like, you can come shelter at ours like for bombings and that, and it was like, what the hell, man? Like you can't even process it here. So yeah, hats off to everyone helping, and if you can chip in by drinking and buying bottles of Phantom Menace, then that's definitely a beautiful cause.
Well, to like on then, in terms of a news perspective, bringing a little bit of levity to proceedings from real devastation to, check this out. Dorset nettle eating competition making comeback.
The comeback.
Is a title. The comeback kid. Apparently, the nettle eating competition dates back to the 1980s when two farmers contested as to who could grow the longest stinging nettle. When the winning farmer produced a 15-foot-long nettle, the loser had to eat all the leaves from the stalk. Only in Dorset, but apparently these competition had been run at the Bottle Inn, a pub in the Marshwood Vale, but had stopped doing it in 2019, and so the lovely people at Dorset Nectar on, check this out, Grant will hate this, Pineapple Lane. There you go. Waytown down in Dorset. They are going to be hosting this year's event on the 25th of June on its farm as a charity fundraiser. Good old Dorset Nectar.
Is that enough time to grow the nettle? Do you know what I mean? Like, because if I was told that it's only in June, I'd be worrying now. I don't know about the sort of growth period of a nettle, but
no, they're out. If you go out, they're
but how do you encourage the growth? I thought you'd need more time to, like, you've got to plant, you've got to have terroir, surely, for a good growing nettle
terroir. I don't know about that. They're pretty hardy, and they. You don't need to worry about the nettles. They're going to be fine. They're starting to poke out. And actually, it's a good job that they're not doing it now, because it's the early season nettles that are particularly stingy. They make you go really ouchy. They're the ones that are still tingling the next day.
They make you go ouchy.
It's a technical term,
Episode
actually.
title.
Thank you. Makes you go really ouchy. So Cider Maker preserves ancient, for 38-year-old tradition of people hurting themselves in the countryside for larks, presumably because the cider will then numb their mouth and everything will be just fine. Well done, Dorset Nectar. And I suppose the final thing to wrap the news on is, let's get that date out there. Everybody in the UK and beyond, get yourselves to Bristol for Saturday, the 2nd of July, because that's when the Cider Salon is going to be taking place at the Trinity Centre. Yes, producer Scott. The fans go wild for the Cider Salon. It's going to be, it's going to be fantastic, as it always is. And I think that there's going to be new producers once again this year. The number of new makers that are popping up all the time, it's amazing. Just can't keep up with it. So get that in the diary. And, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic summer.
What are we saying about foreign cider makers and the kind of chance of getting people back over? Because last year was, as we know, trying to do a live show with a host of American guests, Swedish guests. But yeah, what's the kind of program starting to look like, or is that too early in the time?
I have to say that I haven't had a full look at the list yet. I think there will be some European producers. I don't know whether folks from North America want to come over. There's been one or two historically who've come over. Angry Orchard and Ancho have had a presence, so they may have an interest, they may not. I very much hope that we would get some of the Scandinavian cider makers to come over, the Nordic cider makers. That'd be good to have their presence. But there are so many fantastic burgeoning and smaller new startup cider makers just from the UK alone that I'm sure we could fill the space more over than we actually have room for. So it will be interesting to see who is going to be there. All right, there we go. That's a wrap on the news this week. Now let's get on to our chat with Sam Leach from Wilding Cider. Cider Hotel, it's time to bring on this week's special guest. Today, we are speaking to the co-founder of one of the UK's most name-checked cider makers, whose ciders have graced this podcast on, I'm pretty sure, more than one occasion. Having achieved local infamy in Bristol with their small field to fork restaurant called Birch, our guest and his wife ditched the kitchen to head to the orchard to focus on creating ciders exuding grace and skill, and with a focus on the landscape they came from. Checking into the hotel today, it's Mr. Sam Leach from Wilding Cider. Woo! Woo!
Extra loud for your baby.
Extra loud. Sam, welcome to the Neutral Cider Hotel. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm all right, thank you. I'm good. Yeah.
I hear that you're busy sort of building new house or new bit of house, and you and your lovely wife Becky on diggers and tractors and all sorts today. It's very grown up Bob the Builder type stuff.
That is right. Yeah, we hired a dumper truck, which is fun, and we're at the digging a big hole stage of proceedings. Well, not even really the hole, just flattening everything. We're on a hill, so quite a lot of flattening before we dig a hole. But flattening is done, which is good news. So the next phase, I think we may get a professional in for the hole digging.
You don't trust yourself for your hole digging capabilities.
It's quite hard to sort of make things flat over a longer distance than a couple of meters. So probably, I think it would be worth it.
Mate, I couldn't even do it in my front room. If you walk in it, you feel drunk. It's like, whoa. So I can't imagine on that scale. But with a big project like that, because you've clearly taken on a lot as a family in that sense with the business and that, is there kind of like times where you have to start and stop because of the cider production, or is that lax enough that you can kind of put a big block of time into the house build now?
I guess we sort of have to build stuff around the cider to some extent. I mean, I've been obviously pruning and planting, and that's got a slight time limit to it. And then, bottling things needs to happen when it needs to happen. But actually this year we haven't really done much pet nat. So we're doing a lot of rural method cider, and then we can kind of bottle all that at the same time, end of May. And I guess we can kind of be flexible. That's the great thing about working for yourself. You can be flexible, but it usually means you sort of flexibly work all the time on one thing or another.
It just generally means that you don't stop working at all.
Pretty much.
Flexible means the breaking point just is never met. That's the thing. But also, horse of knowledge.
Quite,
yeah,
absolutely.
I did think there might have been a sort of cantering.
Possibly, for the first time this year, gallivanting around the field, the Horse of Knowledge. For anybody who is new to the show, welcome. Thank you for joining us. The Horse of Knowledge is our moment and opportunity to take a beat and to deep dive into some potential technical talk. You mentioned pet nat, which is probably a little bit more known to many people, the sort of the capturing of the final bit of the initial fermentation in the bottle to give a nice sort of spritz, and you have a little bit of the sediment in there. But you mentioned the rural method. Talk about the rural method, and how does it differ to the urban method?
Well, I think urban method is yet to be coined, but that could work.
Okay. Let's do it.
rural method is also known as cold racked residual sugar natural cider. And we got annoyed just having to explain that to people all the time. So we thought we'll come up with a snappy name. And we didn't actually come up with it. Adam and Danny at Skiberry Cider, they'd already come up with it, and they have their delicious cider called Rural Method, which they've been making since 2016. And they used to do Keeve cider, and then they tried doing this racking thing. And in a way, it's similar to Keeve cider because you're slowing the fermentation down to a stop, leaving natural sugar in the cider, and you're doing it by, rather than like killing everything with pasteurizing, you're reducing the amount of yeast nutrients until the yeast can't live anymore, basically. So with us, we're racking it, pumping the clearish cider off the top of the lees. Every time you leave the lees behind, you're leaving loads of yeast, and in that yeast, all the nutrients that yeast needed to make its cells effectively. So if you left it all in there, even when those yeast cells die, they'll start to break down, and those nutrients become available again for more yeast to make. So, where was I? So yeah, you take that out, and then and it gets to a point where the fermentate. Phyllis, snappier when you do it, Gabe. When I've listened to it on the podcast.
It's just why you have a phrase called like rural method. Just
exactly,
like, it's rural.
exactly.
It's fine.
It serves a purpose. So yeah, this is the new thing. So we make it.
Does.
Skiberry make it. Artistraw do it. There's someone in Dorset whose name I forget. There's not very many of us, but
there's a great maker called
Cyril
Ridge and
Zhang.
Furrow down in Devon.
Oh, that's what I mean. Ridge and Furrow.
Well.
Yeah. That's what I mean, not
yeah.
Dorset, Devon. And yeah, Cyril Zhang in Normandy, he does it. And I think a few other French makers do it.
So maybe the urban method is where you take all that really, really yeasty bit and you just ferment that really quickly until it's really noisy and it's a bit urban. There's sirens going off and all sorts. Yeah, you can tell I live in a small village, can't you?
So scary and loud.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a real weird indictment of urban living there. Gabe.
Yeah, I lived in Bristol for many happy years. I retract that entirely.
Oh my God.
Right.
But Gabe mentioned in the intro about the restaurant Birch. Why would you give that up for cider? Blunt question there. So.
Yeah, all right, straight to the point. Martin Paxman.
Why did you make that life choice? Bang.
It's pretty tiring. I mean, yeah, it's pretty tiring running a restaurant, and it is fun, but it's not really something you can do and like fit it into any other things that people would call normal life, I would say. Or at least not the way we wanted to do it. We kind of liked the idea because we worked for other people first. I was the chef and Becky worked front of house and worked with the wine and the cider and the beer as well a bit. And we were just there all the time. So if it was open, we were there. And so it meant you could only have a day off if you shut the place. And so then that means if you want to like have a baby, for example, you just can't really, because you're getting paid obviously for doing your job. But if you then stop doing that to have a baby and you pay someone else to do that job, you don't get any money. So then you're running a business for nothing. So I guess the choice would have either been to like open all the time and open breakfast and try and make more money out of it and then employ people to take it on, which is quite a lot of stress and risk and pressure, or do something different. And we always wanted to do something different, really. More outside, more farmy. And yeah, cider seems like kind of an obvious choice because like any kind of farming, when you're adding value, like if you make cheese, it's much easier to make a business out of that on a small scale than it is just to have like a handful of cows and do milk, or whatever. So I guess it has that going for it. And also we're just in this part of the world with all these amazing orchards and no one gives a fuck, basically. There's just orchards rotting.
Yes.
And it is mental. It is absolutely mental, It's like if you go, if you went to a fancy wine region, whether that's in like California or Burgundy or Champagne.
Yes, Scott, fancy wine.
There is no way. There's no way you could afford to buy a vineyard unless you're like an oligarch. And it's funny that like in in France now that all these, no, seriously though, there are all these vineyards being bought by oligarchs. Even like what, I don't know, 5 to 10 years ago would have been like maybe 10 years ago would have been like really trendy, pretty niche, like places in the Jura are now being bought by Russian oligarchs and then like taken to big money. So like that's not really an option in wine. I guess you can buy in some like niche small place that's not so famous, and I guess you could probably afford it. But yeah, in the UK, even though land is ridiculously expensive, orchards are easy to rent, you know. So that's what we started doing. We just found these orchards and not even really renting, because it's difficult to actually rent, like sign on paper, but we have that effectively. And yeah, you know, you just go and say what's happening with your orchard, and they say, oh, well, there used to be a guy called, you know, Clive, and he used to come, and then he Clive, doesn't, yes. You know, he doesn't come anymore, and no one knows what happened to him, or whatever, or like, you know,
what happened to Clive?
Wait,
well, I don't know.
Our American listeners hearing like this story of Clive, like, what the hell has gone on? Grant isn't here for one episode, and we've had Russian oligarchs and a mysterious Clive. Is that? I asked you why did you change from a restaurant to cider?
It's all, everything's geopolitical, isn't it? It's all fits in to the big picture.
Well, it's, you know, the fact that you've talked about the orchard straight away is great, because it was the first bit that I was going to come to. I don't think there is another cider maker that I can think of off the top of my head who puts not just talking about orchards and their differentiation, which is obviously something that we're going to do right now, in fact, but also just about the care and the reverence that you seem to have for them as landscapes, and that you actively want to try and manage the orchards, not just try and rely on somebody to give you some apples. What is it? What is it about these orchard environments that sort of fills you with so much sort of passion, I suppose?
I guess it's lots of things, really. I think I've always liked orchards, and I think maybe where it started is around where I grew up. I grew up in Ditchett, and that's near Shepton Mallet, which is sort of the heart of Somerset cider making. Only because of showerings, really. Like, the better orcharding is probably, if you don't tell anyone from Ditchett, it's probably a bit further south. You know, like near Borough Hill, Kingsbury Episcopi, Martot, Lambert. Though that is like super, super famous orcharding country. But like where I grew up, it is definitely one of the best villages for traditional orchards in Somerset, and therefore the world. And and so, but there's no other trees, so everything other than orchard is like industrial.
There are no oak trees, there are no beech trees. I mean, it's just apple trees. That
is basically it. There's the odd oak tree, but basically there's no woodlands and there's no other trees around. And I always liked trees, and I've always liked woodland. And I like, my grandparents lived near a wood. You know, they're like a few fields away from them there was a wood, and I always used to go there with my cousins, and that was, to me, was like the dream. And then back at home there wasn't that, but there were the orchards. So I think like that was probably the start of it, that they were the nearest thing to woods, and they were right surrounding all the Barbers orchards. The Barbers again, this is quite a niche kind of reference, but the Barbers are quite a big like cheese making family. And they actually do export all over the place. So probably you get them in America and you get them across Europe. But anyway, they have these beautiful big old orchards. And so, yeah, I got really interested in it then, I suppose. And then when you kind of get older, you sort of see, I don't know, it's easier to see like the context of it. And you see these orchards that are not getting maybe as much care as they should. And the fruit is then, but they're special, and the fruit is amazing. And then the fruit is going to be made into blackthorn, you know, especially in the old day. Now there are other people who are using it, and some better cider makers. But that always seemed mental, that this incredible fruit that is like I don't know, Burgundy, Premier Cru kind of quality fruit is going to be watered down with 70% water and sugar and turn into something incredibly bland and dull. And then all these orchards just kind of covered in, not those orchards, but other orchards around covered in mistletoe and trees falling down. And gradually it gets to the stage where there's like 5 left, and then it's 3 trees left, and then it's not an orchard anymore. So yeah, I guess there's that kind of angle. And then the other angle is I really like cider and the fruit.
That is a good angle.
Sam,
and
I think we can lean in on that angle.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I wanted to tell me about your life story. No, I wanted to talk about the positivity of orcharding and what you're saying there. We've got a rare example, especially for us on the show, but we've got 2 ciders, same variety, different orchard from you.
Yeah.
So we've got Stoke Red 1 and Stoke Red 2.
Yeah.
How did that come about to be released as like 2 different things, single variety?
I've always liked the idea of doing that, and I think we were lucky to be able to do it. So we started in 2018 at Abbottsley, which is Stoke Red 1, and they'd actually kind of got in touch with us through some of their friends who used to come and eat at the restaurant. They said, "Oh, we hear you're going to make cider. Some of our friends have got a cider orchard. They're just outside Bristol. Do you want to meet them?" So we did, and they brought out this map. It was like the original map from 1951 stuck to a piece of plywood. And I was looking at all the varieties, Davenet, Yarlington Mill, Tremlitz. And I was like, great, this is wicked. And then I was like, hang on a minute, what does SR mean? And I looked at the key and it's like Stoke Red. And I was like, amazing. And there was this row of Stoke Red. And it was the first time we'd ever had it available. We'd done a bit of hobby making the sort of few years previously. But we'd never had any Stoke Red. And obviously I'd drunk other people's Stoke Reds and really enjoyed them. And, so we started making that. You can only make every other year. So we made 2018 and then this vintage 2020. It's the second one we've done. But in that year, I'd started to explore the Barber's orchards and so like just over a field from my mum and dad's house. And they're great fun to kind of walk around. There's all sorts of varieties that I don't know. And it's quite fun to kind of trying to ID them. But anyway, I found these few trees of Stoke Red and I thought, this is a good opportunity to see about terroir in cider. Because people talk about it, and they usually talk about it as if like, does terroir exist in cider? Is that a thing in apples? And it's like, well, obviously, of course it is. Because, like,
he's been listening to the show. That's us.
Yeah.
Is it real? Yeah. Of course it is, you idiot.
So yeah, it is, because obviously everything, all the things that make a wine grape taste different are going to make a cider apple taste different from one place to another. But you can't prove it unless you can do something like this. You use the same variety or use exactly the same blend of whatever. And because usually with cider you're blending, for our part of the world anyway, you're usually blending. So then it's usually hard to show the difference. Or it's like we make the Stoke Red in the rural method, and then Burrow Hill making a traditional method Stoke Red. So there's this bone dry and it's been aged for like 7 years. And then, Oliver's do whatever he does. And then, other people are keeving it or petnatting it. So those methods are really different. So then it's really hard to say, yes, it's the terroir. But in this case, they're picked in the same week. They're pressed on the same day. I racked them every time on the same day. And then they're bottled on consecutive days. So, and they're both in stainless. One tank was bigger than the other. I guess that's one difference. But other than that, it's just...
there we go. Null and void. Null and void. That's it. You ruined it. Ruined it. That's it. Sorry, mate. Yeah.
We were this close.
I know.
So very close.
Does terroir exist inside? I don't know.
think, first of all, horse of knowledge for Stoke Red, because not everybody necessarily knows Stoke Red.
Yeah.
It is a classic Somerset bitter sharp apple. So that means it's got some acidity as well as some sort of nice soft kind of tannin. It's not necessarily the most like sort of intense or bitter, certainly. It's quite soft, but with real nice kind of fruitiness in there. It's nearly It's nearly as good as a Dimmock Red, basically. That's what we're trying to say, which is, the classic, old bitter sharp.
Yeah.
And actually, I in the 100 litres of cider that I made this year, I reckon it's probably at least a quarter, if not a touch more Stoke Red. So we'll see.
Nice.
It's the first time I've ever picked it as well.
Nice.
So we'll see.
How did you make this about you? I mean,
it's very easy. It's very, very easy. There is a topic. There is me. I bring the topic to me.
Well,
so,
let's lean in on that, Gabe. What are you thinking about 1 and 2? Have you had both of them yet?
I have. I've got them both in front of me. Absolutely fascinating that they are quite different. Not that the fundamental, you can see that it is the same fruit, the same variety. We do still have acidity. We do still have that soft, lightly kind of grippy tannin, but they present in different ways. Number one, which is the Abbott's Lee. Oh, I had that nose. It's just so, it's so fruity. It's a real sort of floral stone fruitiness, but it's just sort of, it's like pure. It's like the streams of Babylon would be burbling and gurgling with this. It's just so gorgeous.
I wasn't going to say anything way as lyrically waxing as that. But I get that huge, it's like massive fruit on the nose, but there's like a tiny bit of like, it's like a strawish note on the back. And it's like, honestly, it just smells like holding fresh fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sip, I just love that sort of the tannin and the acid interplay. Like my mouth has just got like real like coating on the roof of the mouth tannin, and then a little wash of acidity at the end. Yeah. So I drank the first one quite quickly. I've topped up again. But then the second one, the contrast between them, this one's a little bit more funky and wild on the nose, but not in like a faulty way that makes it sound bad. Just like it's a bit more of the ferments there. And then the acid is actually standing out more to me, which I didn't. Yeah. I don't know if it's because I've been having it after number one each time, but I've gone back to it after some water then. But it's like real, like crisp and a little bit lime wine gummy as well. It's like, it's crazy how different they are.
Well, I'm picking it sort of different. For me, I totally agree with this slightly more phenolic and earthy and spicy and barney on the nose. But actually it's just so velveteen in the mouth. There's a real, I'm not sure whether it is a little bit sweeter in real life, but I'm perceiving it as being a little lower on the acidity, and it's just that sort of big lusciousness. Yeah, in the mouth.
I'm pretty sure sugar-wise they're almost exactly the same.
I'm pretty sure Gabe's right.
I think the difference personally is that there's more tannin on number one, and so then you get less acid perception, and then you get more acid on the second one because the tannin is slightly lower. A bit more velvety on the second one. Also, I get more like savory on the second one, and it's a bit sweeter on the first one.
Yes,
just in terms of like aromatically. And I was going to say
there's a nice umami-ness in there.
I was going to say the Stoke number one is more like classically Stoke Red, but then there's only the third Stoke Red I made, so I don't think I can really say like what the archetype is.
This is classic rural method Stoke Red. This is I've read all the books about it.
I have had actually
suburban, yes.
Two other rural method Stoke Reds. One by Barleywood, who made that was an excellent one, and one by Skiberry. Both kind of annoyingly small batches, so there wasn't really much available, but they're both really good, and they're both very similar to the Abbott's Lee one, I would say. That kind of like rose, you get like a sort of rose water, strawberries and cream vibe from Stoke Red. I think that's kind of classic Stoke Red.
It's a variety that isn't grown so much up in sort of Herefordshire, Gloucestershire, so it's always nice to try a cider with the variety. But the one that stands out was that Tom Oliver's done it on occasion, and that rose water, that's absolutely the character. So a little bit more on number one. So what do we think? You're talking about terroir, and I in my second book, Modern British Cider, still available, everybody, still very much available. There it is. I made a comment about terroir that I didn't think it was as important in cider as it is with wine for in terms of the identification of regionality, and because the majority of ciders can and do have some form of dilution and amelioration with sweetness and tweaking and things like that, that maybe it's harder. I do obviously agree to the fact that growing a fruit on one piece of land versus another has to have an impact over the way that it presents itself. But there's also the nature of, for somebody who's wild fermenting, such as yourself, so not the addition of any other yeasts in there, what impact does that have over the way that it presents itself? And I suppose, secondly, is that actually part of the terroir? So, you know, that ditcher is definitely having some more sort of bacterial and yeast impact. Is that terroir?
Oh, yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining the show, Sam. See you next time.
Well, let's lean in on that in a little bit. But with cider, it seems like, in comparison to wine, that like the making of it is not as widely sort of understood in cohesion altogether. Like all the cider makers aren't doing the same thing and formatting it the same way, so that you as the consumer can kind of know what to expect, or that even if it is a single variety, that your single variety of the same apple isn't going to be completely different to someone else's. So how do you guys go about kind of presenting cider and the conversations of getting people educated as to how you make cider?
It is quite a difficult one, definitely, because for a lot of people, they do have like a preconception of what cider is, and it's a very narrow selection of what cider is. And, you know, it's like either sweet, fizzy, diluted cider, like alcopop type cider, or it's often like farmy, maybe a bit rough, maybe a bit vinegary, maybe a bit mousy kind of cider. And I think so that's kind of difficult. I guess in a way it's like, you know, somebody, if you think about like a wine analogy or a beer analogy, it's like somebody knows that they know about like Carling, and they know about, you know, real ale, or like one real ale, let's say they've tried one real ale, but then you say to them, this is like a triple hopped, blah, blah, blah kind of IPA. And then that's something, or like, here's a stout, a raspberry stout, and then it just kind of blows their mind. So it's a bit like that with cider, except the bit in the middle that people don't know about is like way bigger than either of the other ends, if you see what I mean. The potential for it. It's like, it's almost, I mean, or in the wine sense, it's like they've had like I don't know, a white wine spritzer, and they've had a really nice champagne, let's say, but they've never heard of red wine. And I think that's that can be the case with cider. So like, we had a cider, the Chisel Jersey blend we did in 2018, and it was like mega tannin. It'd been in a barrel, and it was low acid, it was bone dry. And we had somebody who really liked our other cider, like somebody who ran a shop who liked our other ciders and was selling them regularly. And then they were like, this isn't right, this one. And so they sent it back. And I think they just never come across anything like that before. And so they had it in the fridge, and they like took it out of the fridge. They probably only tried sweet ones from us in the past. And then, you know, you have that, and it would be like, if you're expecting like a glass of Chablis, and then you have like an ice cold kind of Barolo or something like that, it would be pretty horrible. So my phone keeps going off. So that's the problem. And I guess in terms of how we deal with that, I just don't know. Like, you just can't put enough information on a label, really. I mean, I think the idea is just to be sort of tasting stuff with people, and that's something we want to do more of. But it has been a bit difficult with COVID, anything like that, over the last couple of years. But yeah, that's a big challenge for cider, and I think it's starting to improve, because people are kind of, I guess basically people are like starting to realize that cider is a drink that you can drink with food, in the same way that wine is a drink that you drink with food. I think people would often think of cider as more like a drink you drink in a pub, or like on a summer's afternoon kind of thing. And it was pigeonholed into a fairly narrow opportunity for drinking. And I think like once you sort of start drinking with food, all these different styles of cider suddenly make sense, because they're like, it's a cider, it's not very refreshing, it's not very like easy going, but then as soon as you're drinking it with food, it fits, and it's like cutting through the richness, or it's complementing flavors and so on and so forth.
Well, I was going to, talk about that as coming from your food background. Do you have any sort of particular sort of angles or things that you like to approach when you're working with the ciders and with food? Is it down sort of the classic lines like you've said, sort of like acidity cutting through fatness and sweetness, or whether you're using really big tannins with big intense kind of flavors? Do you kind of go down that route, or is there anything else that you sort of inject into proceedings?
I mean, I guess like a lot of the traditional things work. I guess that there are things, obviously we all know about cheese and pork going with cider, and I think there are other things which should be classic but aren't yet, like oysters and cider. I think that's like a nice, amazing combination. Well, obviously not any cider, but certainly like something with a little bit of a fizz, a little bit of residual sugar, a little bit of tannin, not too much, and nice acidity. Like maybe like a light,
probably a rural method Stoke Red, possibly,
or a bone dry,
could be
that
the
kind
trick.
Of thing. I think not that I'm eating oysters all the time, but I think cider is the nicest drink to drink with oysters personally, or either that or stout maybe. But like a lot of the a lot of the kind of classic things, that they're classic for a reason. I think cider's really good with like creamy kind of dishes, rich fatty dishes. That like combination of tannin and acid is really good with fat, and kind of really rich stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of something that I think is really interesting, is like just in general in our cider making. I'm really interested in the kind of things you can make that people generally don't, because they don't fit within a relatively narrow view of what cider is. So like there are a lot of apple varieties, I think, that if you make a single variety of that apple, it's absolutely revolting and it's just way too much, but if you blend it in, it's working. And I think what often happens is people are blending it in as like 1-2%, or just whatever they pick up in the orchard, it just chuck it in, and you've got enough things like Michelin or Dabinet or Dove or something that's really Yarlington Mill, something's really easy going and easy to drink, and then these other things slot in behind it effectively. But I'm really interested in like bringing those things.
Is this a veiled insult at Foxwhelp?
Yeah.
Well, I guess Foxwhelp is a really good example, because if you use it in like tiny quantities, and you really can use it as like 0.5% in a blend, it'll jazz stuff up and make it interesting. But I'm also quite interested about like, what about 50% Foxwhelp in a blend, and then stick it in a barrel for a good amount of time and see what happens. I think that's quite a cool idea, and I think what kind of people are heading towards that, because like what's happened in cider in the last 5 years, let's say, is people being like, hey, look at Foxwhelp, this is a really interesting thing, and doing it as like a single variety, which is very interesting as a cider lover. It's fascinating, but it's also basically undrinkable. And so what would be cool?
Ooh, controversial. Hang on, what's that sound? Hang on. That is the sound of Chief Foxwhelpian Kath Potter banging on your door, Sam Leach. Goodness me, you might regret that at the cider salon, quite possibly. But I do take your point. But it's quite interesting. But it does sound like that's kind of what you're trying to do as well, is that you are sort of making these awkward ciders, or these ciders with apples that aren't classically kind of showcased. Yeah. So maybe it's a little bit of the same thing. Yeah,
no, I think that is true. That is fair. And I'm obviously exaggerating for comic effect, but I think that that is quite exciting. And there are these varieties that I never used, and they sound great. You read about them in the book. Oh shit, a ghost just opened your door, Scott. Did you see that? It just suddenly opened.
Okay. It's either a ghost or it's a dog.
I was a dog.
You listeners will know that this is actually Paranormal Activity, the podcast. Talking then about exaggerating for comedic effect. Then, Sam, the length of your arms has somewhat become indirect discussion of your business. Can you kind of confer? So, with you guys having a similar name, who was first? Who did what? And have you had his cider yet?
I haven't had it. I never met them. I'd like to. I think we were first, but I don't know. I think we started making cider at the same time, as far as I can see. But when we came up with the name, and I Googled, they were nowhere to be seen. So it was an honest, not mistake, but it was an honest situation. My arms, I think, are just a normal length.
Oh God.
Well, we have had the opportunity to try Tom from Wildling and his ciders, and very pleasant they are too. In fact, somebody that would be good to get the meetup at some stage.
Yeah.
Now you were talking about cheese as well, because Ditchit is famous for cheese, or Barbers you were talking about as well. Is there, if there was one apple, I suppose, variety that would match with, that is the best thing to go with a lump of lovely vintage, intense, aged cheddar, what would it be? What do you reckon?
Good question.
Rural Method State Road.
Maybe Yarlington Mill. I think maybe Yarlington Mill, because it's kind of, I don't think with a cheddar you want too much acid. I think you do want tannin.
No.
And you do want like fruitiness. Yeah, Yarlington Mill, I reckon. I would say.
There we go.
Or a Yarlington Mill Stoke Red blend out next week from Wilding.
Well, there we go. That's it. Go for that which has some commercial imperative. Sam, thank you for taking the time to join us here at the Neutral Cider Hotel. Before we let you go, what would you like to plug other than the Yarlington Mill Stoke Red blend? Where is the best place online for people to learn more all about you?
Well, it should be our website, but it needs updating, so maybe not. I don't know. But,
you're a real cider maker. Excellent.
You could try. I don't know. Yeah, we're online. Fine Cider Company have us. Scrattings have us. Cat and Glass have us. Pullo and Exeter have us online, and probably others online. And we're in lots of good shops nationwide. And we open the farm here, so not where we actually make the cider, unfortunately, but where we live and where our orchard is. We are open the second Saturday of the month from April to September. You can come along, and this year, because COVID is not a distant memory, but we're just sort of over it, we're going to do tastings. So we're going to open this first one in April. We've got 6 new ciders coming out. We're going to open them all and taste them then. And they'll be available online, hopefully sort of middle of next week. Although obviously this is recorded, so that's irrelevant. By the time we're in April.
Available now.
Available now. Yeah. In all good bottle shops in the UK.
Amazing. And people can keep up to speed with your activities, Wilding Cider, on Instagram. That's where we get to see lots and lots of lovely images, because they're frequently of somebody working out in an orchard, which is just a beautiful, beautiful landscape. So, Sam, thank you so much once again. As I say, it's a long time coming having you here on the show, and I reckon you might be up to nearly matching Little Pomona in terms of the number of times that we've tasted you on the show. So
thank you very much.
You're in good company. Let the competition between Somerset and Herefordshire continue.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me, and see you soon.
See you later, big man.
Will do. Cheers, Sam. See you at the Cider Salon, 2nd of July, everybody. If you haven't bought your ticket, go to cidersalon.co.uk. Sam will be there.
Well, actually, I might not be there. I haven't confirmed that weekend yet.
Yeah, that's true. Presuming. Well, there we go. Lovely Sam from Wilding, not Wildling. Just for extra clarification, just in case everyone didn't get it. And a really, a unique opportunity to try two ciders that have been as much as possible made identically, effectively, side by side, different orchards being the different factor. Did you say, Martin, that you enjoyed the number one, the Abbottsley one? Did you enjoy it better? I mean, you can see the merits in both.
I mean, like two completely different textures. That's the thing that I got from it, where it was like, and I said more acidity in the other one, and as soon as he says it, of like the balance of tannins, it's just that the first one's got like real mouth coating structure, and I think the fruit, like the sweet kind of fruit character and all that body's there, and there's a bit more kind of rugged funk on the nose of the other one, but it genuinely, if I cracked them on different nights without knowing their relationship to the other, I think I would be more inclined to say I prefer the second one. Do you know what I mean? Because that sounds like exactly on paper like what I would drink. But I got to say, I think the first one takes the cake for me.
There is an impressive elegance to that first cider that I think would appeal to a range of drinkers who would be coming just from that pure fruity expression. I think that the second cider would appeal to people who are really into sort of keeved ciders or rural method ciders, or other kind of well fermented ciders that do have a little bit more of that sort of phenolic and sort of richness sort of on the nose. Anyone who's a fan of Ross and Y would undoubtedly, with a little bit of sweetness that this one has, would undoubtedly kind of get on board. But just, I'm getting increasingly fascinated by the whole cider and terroir thing.
Terroir.
The more terroir, the more that I get into it and the thinker that I understand more, the more confusing it gets. Because although I can understand Sam saying that the impact of the microflora, the yeast and bacteria, is part of the terroir, is that something that is identical and replicates itself every single time, or is that just the yeast and bacteria that's got into this batch on this occasion under these kind of conditions? Is that actually a reflection of how that land tastes? Is terroir about land only, or is it about practice and custom? And if it is the latter, then surely that sort of has the opportunity to change loads as well. So, gosh, I think I hear a third book coming on.
My God.
We're going to need a new sound. We're going to need a new sound. Don't worry, it'll take ages to write, and will require lots of traveling, which maybe isn't such a good idea. So yeah, just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And ultimately two really, really tasty ciders, which I suppose is the single most important thing. All right, there we go. Now it's time to answer the questions our listeners have for us. Yes, it's time to dive into the speak pipe. And now it's time for us to go to the speak pipe. Ooh, for the very first time in season 2. Scott, who do we have today?
Well, we have a fan named Ian, and he's calling in from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Have either of you been to Pittsburgh before?
No.
Okay. It's great. Great conversation starter there.
The only sport I actually follow is boxing, but in uni, I loved hockey, and the Pittsburgh Penguins are simply the greatest team in any sport. The only team sport I like. So I'm happy for a Pittsburghian to call in.
Did you call it? Hang on. Did you say that he's got a bogey?
Pittsburghian. That's how they say it over there. Pittsburgh.
Pittsburghian.
It's a Pittsburghian.
All right. Well, let's see what.
Actually, hang on. Sorry. I've got to there's obviously more cider connections that I have to fill in,
No,
which is
Scott, tell us.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, Mr. Oliver's favorite football team.
Football is actually the only sport I follow. So
there you go. And there's also about William Pitt, the younger, who was the guy who opposed the Cider Bill of 1763, which enabled the tax-person man to come onto your property without a warrant. And he was like, we must be able to defend our property with our life. And it was, the basis of that rebuttal, which is the basis of the is it the Fourth Amendment? Which is the
I love when you quote the Constitution and just throw out amendments. It's always such a joy.
You're so unconstitutional, producer Scott. How do you not know your constitutions off by heart? Anyway, that's why it's called Pittsburgh. It's named after
Ian.
him.
Let's hope your question actually lives up to this
Better be
magnitude that Pittsburghans have somehow.
The interesting thing about Pittsburgh is they do have a very distinct accent, and I think you'll hear it from Ian.
Is it the accent that Martin is currently
No,
doing?
you'll hear it from Ian. You'll get it. So here we go. Here's Ian from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name's Ian, and I like.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Ian McLeod from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, originally from Scotland. Big Frightened Rabbit fan, so that's what got me into the Neutral Cider Hotel. Had the pleasure of meeting Grant and the boys in 2018 and 2016, maybe in Pittsburgh area. But
nice.
Love what you're doing. You've got me into cider. I've been trying lots of different ciders, 1911, Artifact. Got another one today, JK. So trying it all out, trying to experience things along with you guys. Really enjoying the show. Figured I'd ask you a quick question. I heard some of your movie recommendations last year and I checked a few of them out. So thanks for the tips there. I'd just like to throw out one for you guys. I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are. It's a Nicolas Cage movie called Mandy. You might not want to be drunk at the time, but really like to see if any of you have seen it and what your thoughts are. Take it easy and enjoy yourselves. Bye for now.
Oh, well, good to know that Gabe and I can answer the Frightened Rabbit fans question. That really does.
Well, it wasn't about Frightened Rabbit.
No, but he clearly is a lovely fan of a lovely band with a lovely Scotsman who's not here. When you were like, they've got a particular accent in Pittsburgh, and he was like, hello, how you doing there, she? What? I literally thought I was like an idiot, and then he said it.
Played us like a fool.
Absolute fiddle, Scott. Well done.
Good work, Scott. Well played.
Well, I'll tell you what, first off, before I answer the Mandy question, glad to know that it isn't just a case of like, oh, I'm listening to the podcast because of the music, or, oh, we'll just drink the cider and the music's irrelevant. To know that there's someone who's gone, I'm actually going to check out who Artifact are. That is like, that's heartwarming. If you can be on like Feels Like Home tinnies and stuff like that from those guys, what a great place to start drinking cider, eh? Like, doesn't get better. And to answer your question, Mandy, yes. And very colourful is my very simple summary of the film. Have either of you seen it?
I have not seen it, so I can't pass judgment, I'm afraid.
It's basically a horror film shot like an acid trip of bolt coloured madness, and it is off the wall. So
When did Nicolas Cage get so avant-garde? I just remember him just put the bunny back in the box.
Yeah, but he was.
Has cinema ever been any better than Con Air? That's the question.
He was also in one. No, it hasn't, and two, yeah, because he was in like Wild at Heart. Nicolas Cage has had the most oddly. It's like varied career of almost. He must have had some financial struggles and some creative madness where he's accepted films that you would go, why have you done that? And then also the vanity projects, you're like, why have you done that? So his like whole filmography is just like a mad gamble. In fact, his last film is about him being himself. And it's his highest rated film. So it's like,
well, I don't think it's come out yet. It's the unbearable weight of massive talent. I've seen the trailers for it. At least here in the States, I think it's not going to be released till April.
Is that the name of the movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yes.
And he plays himself.
Yes. in a Larry David playing himself in a Curb Your Enthusiasm, slightly exaggerated version of himself kind of way?
I think it's that meets like a kind of buddy cop gone wrong kind of vibe. Watch the trailer for it. Because I think you would, I'm definitely going to watch it. But to actually go back and answer the question, Mandy, if you like horror films and you like visual spectacle and you like somewhere between sort of B-movie and Dario Argento, I think that's how you say his name. I can't remember now.
CC.
But that kind of like big, bold, abstract horror. Mandy's definitely for you. And like you say, don't get drunk and watch it because it is pretty intense.
Oh, wow. And it's pretty recent. It came out in 2018.
Yeah. But like you can see can you see the poster there or whatever you're looking at? Like it's like weird neon light. The whole film is shot like
pink
this,
and purple.
like mad color. I'm colorblind as well. So it was like, what the hell is happening?
Well, for Ian and anybody else in the Pennsylvania state, or I suppose further beyond with the distributors that there are, check out two of my favorite USA makers from Pennsylvania, a little bit sort of further to the south from Pittsburgh, Adams County way. We're talking about Plowman's, and we're talking about the Big Hill Cider Works making some absolutely fantastic ciders. Don't think Big Hill or Plowman's have got a Stoke Red, but but Big Hill certainly does make a Kingston Black single variety, another fine, bitter, sharp Somerset cider apple. Thanks for your question, Ian.
Wait. Why don't we lean in a little bit? Do you have a favorite Nicolas Cage movie?
Well, I mean, Con Air is a modern classic. Is it not? I mean, in a slightly ironic way, of course, but
I don't think fun has to be ironic though. Like it doesn't have to be an arty. Like it is objectively fun watching him in that. Face Off is a banger. But
Face Off, exactly. Yeah,
we watched it this year. Not Face Off. We watched it this year, and it's one of my favorite films. The remake of The Wicker Man. It's just I mean, wow, like decision making at its most bold. It's a phenomenal piece of thing to watch, and you're like, it wouldn't be anything about Nicolas Cage, and he somehow elevates it to like maddeningly, why is this happening? And wouldn't have it any other way.
I think for me, Raising Arizona is an early one.
Yeah,
of course,
Coen Brothers. That kind of set the path for me of being a fan of Nicolas Cage for a long time to come. Of course, Leaving Las Vegas also in there probably.
What was the one where he was flaming on a motorcycle?
Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider.
He's flaming on a motorcycle. That's how you would describe it to someone.
Well, that was visually accurate.
Look at that man on that motorcycle. What's he doing? He's just flaming away. He's flaming real hard on that motorcycle.
Flaming motorcyclist.
He's just flaming.
Oh, God.
How else would you describe it? I mean,
he rides a motorcycle and his head is a flaming skull. He's not flaming. That shouldn't be as funny as it is. I'm crying.
We've even got Tears from Scott here. This is
Oh wow! What a place to end it! How else did you end it?
Who knew that Nicolas Cage would cause us such mirth and such entertainment? Ian, your speak pipe question has prompted so much. Well, it seems appropriate that we finish on that wonderful high note. So there we go. Thank you again to the wonderful Sam Leach of Wilding Cider for a really fun and enlightening conversation about terroir and beyond. And if you enjoy our podcast and want to help, then please do spread the word about the Neutral Cider Hotel, just like Ian has done. Tell your friends about it and encourage them to listen. You can also follow, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. 5-star reviews are very much appreciated, and your efforts do fabulously help us out. Also, please find and follow us on social media. We're at Neutral Cider Hotel on Instagram and Facebook, and Neutral Cider Pod on Twitter. As always, you can visit us on our website to listen online or share episodes at neutralciderhotel.com. And lastly, please do, much like Ian, reach out to us and leave a voicemail with your questions or comments at speakpipe.com/Neutral Cider Hotel. I very much look forward to asking the question as to what's our favourite John Travolta movie next time. But until that next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening, and wassail!